Welcome to Forward Thinking. I'm Deepak Jobanputra, Vitality's Chief Sustainability Officer. Thanks so much for joining us today.
And I'm Kate Anderson, a Sustainability Actuary here at Vitality.
For the final part of our series, we're focusing on how sustainability links to health and life insurance and what this means for your business now and into the future. Once again, we'll address some key topics over the next 10 minutes before heading into a live discussion with our panel of experts. So please remember to get your thoughts and comments in the chat. And you'll get CPD for this, and we'll even plant trees for your engagement. We'll explore the importance of sustainability in health and life insurance, how health and life insurers contribute to a more sustainable future, and why all this matters. We'll also discuss what you as advisors could be doing and how you can embed this into your business. The insurance industry has a critical role to play in not just promoting sustainability, both to society and the planet, but initiating change and delivering better outcomes.
We've already explored the links between the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The UN is further driving sustainability within the finance industry by bringing together banks, insurers and investors to help deliver more sustainable global economies. And as part of this, there are the Principles for Sustainable Insurance, known as the PSI. The PSI provides a global framework specifically for insurers to address environment, social and governance risks. But what does sustainable insurance actually look like? Sustainable insurance requires all activities in the value chain to be done in a responsible way. Through innovation, insurers can reduce risk, deliver better business performance, and contribute to environmental, social, and economic sustainability.
Health and life insurers already contribute significantly to a sustainable future. For example, by reducing deaths and disease from lifestyle risk and supporting mental health, which falls under the United Nations' third SDG, which is good health and well-being. And as advisors, you contribute towards providing insurance benefits, enhancing resilience in society. And collectively, we need to keep doing more of this whilst innovating to deal with the changing world. By prioritising behaviour change and prevention, we can reduce the overall demand for healthcare services, which in turn can lead to a healthier population and lower healthcare costs. At Vitality, we encourage healthy habit formation through rewards and incentives as part of a shared value approach to insurance. This improves access to healthcare through reduced demand, freeing up so more people can receive medical attention earlier and before conditions become severe. Digital pathways for everyday care, such as online health services, are also instrumental here, providing convenient and efficient access to healthcare to make it more streamlined and effective.
The UN's paper, titled "Health is Our Greatest Wealth," highlighted the breadth of opportunity that exists for insurers to make a real positive societal impact. This includes addressing the protection gap, as well as driving better health outcomes across 7 areas: health awareness and capabilities, lifestyle and behaviour change, healthy ageing, access for at-risk groups, mental health care services, antimicrobial resistance, and healthy environment. The paper also outlines a 4-point plan for life and health insurers to implement this.
And this involves offering insurance products that are suitable, affordable, and accessible. Secondly, engaging with policyholders and other stakeholders to promote preventative health care. Thirdly, leveraging technology and ethical use of data to expand access to insurance and support prevention measures. And fourthly, collaborating with healthcare providers, policymakers, and local communities. Through a shared value approach to insurance, there is a real opportunity to create positive social impact by driving better health outcomes and reducing protection gaps. All this highlights how sustainability is better for the environment and also the well-being of communities through a forward-thinking approach that benefits everyone.
So, how can we put sustainability principles into practice? We've already explored how the healthcare services we provide as an industry are deeply interconnected with the health of our planet, and how we have a responsibility at every stage of the supply chain, from reinsurer to advisor to end customer, to support healthier, more sustainable action. While this applies to individual lifestyle choices, it also relates to our industry's significant carbon footprint, especially healthcare services.
At Vitality, our sustainability framework has 3 pillars: align, influence and impact. And running through each one of these very briefly. Align focuses on embedding sustainability into our culture and decision making. For example, all of Vitality offices are powered by renewable electricity, and our entire nurse fleet of cars has transitioned to hybrid. Another component is driving awareness so that we all own the agenda for sustainability, really making it part of our culture. The second pillar, influence, involves collaborating with partners and suppliers to create positive change. As a health and life insurer, most of our emissions come from our supply chain, which is common for services businesses, making this a vital pillar in our net zero strategy. We've engaged with our suppliers to influence change. We are committed to publishing our net zero transition plan by the end of the year, which will detail our strategy on decarbonising our operations and our supply chain. And thirdly, the impact of pillar is all about encouraging people to make sustainable choices through our products and services. We recently introduced Music Mapkai, which allows members to recycle their Apple Watch and support a more circular economy. We're always on the lookout for ways to boost the social impact of these initiatives. For instance, take Parkrun. We're really excited to launch Park Walk to get even more people involved. It's all about making it more accessible and inclusive for everyone. And of course, through the Vitality Programme and our partners, we promote healthy lifestyles through rewards and incentives to make people healthier, alongside access to health checks, wearable technology and preventative behaviour change.
So, where do you as advisors come in when it comes to creating a more sustainable future and future-proofing your business? To make it simple, we've broken this down into 3 steps. Firstly, it starts with you. Increase your awareness and advocate for sustainability. Step 2, make your company more sustainable, both internally and externally. And step 3, speak to your customers about sustainability and incorporate it into your sales process. The good news is, you've already taken the first step. By attending these webinars, you should now have a foundational understanding of the links between sustainability and the insurance industry, and in particular, health and life insurance. Plus, in the panel discussion shortly, we'll go into additional detail for how you can integrate sustainability credibly into your business and confidently into your conversations with your clients. If you want to go even deeper, you can also watch our training modules on the Vitality Academy. These are short videos exploring the topics we've covered with suggested further reading.
Step 2 is about supporting your organisation to become more sustainable, both internally and externally. Internally, your company could make small changes like using renewable electricity and promoting digital documentation. We recognise that this needs to be practical, convenient and cost effective. And we're not suggesting we change everything overnight, but every small step contributes. Also, educating your employees and colleagues about sustainable practices, both personally and professionally, is also important. Spread the news. Just as you would promote good health and well-being to create a more productive workplace, we need to do the same for sustainable practices. Healthy people need a healthy planet. Supporting community initiatives such as through employee volunteering is also a great way to give back to a local or national community. Remember, sustainability isn't just about the environment, but also about social impact. Within your supply chain, you could look to influence positive action. For example, we have integrated sustainability criteria into our supply management process and introduced sustainability principles for our merchandise. We haven't quite perfected it, but we've made great progress and measure a whole range of outcomes. This is a really important concept because, as we've explained, all of these issues are interconnected and we need everyone to play a role. If everyone in the value chain works towards the same goal, the multiplier effect will drive change to make the world a better place.
Finally, to work towards a sustainable future, it's critical that you engage with your customers about sustainability. You could emphasise the impact of preventative health measures and explain how insurance products can contribute to a sustainable future. You can also select providers based on their sustainability credentials to match your clients' expectations. Some firms might be able to offer discounts for eco-friendly practices to incentivise sustainable behaviour alongside health and wellbeing initiatives.
So to recap, insurance plays a significant role in society, and you, as advisors, play a meaningful part. You give your clients a service that gives them a better life and creates resilience for them and wider society. Sustainability is good for your customers, your business, and society. It is really urgent, and the time to act is now.
Vitality is here to support you on this journey. Together, we can create a healthier, more sustainable future. Thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned for our live panel discussion and audience Q&A. So please get your thoughts and comments in the chat. See you soon.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. So I'm Rob Harvey, Vitality's advisor editor. Really pleased to be joined by our expert panel of speakers today. So look, a really interesting topic and the third in our forward-thinking sustainability series, but I think perhaps the most important discussion today really in terms of how we take some of these big concepts that we've spoken about in today's session and last week's and the week before and sort of distill those down into something that you, the advisors watching today, can apply in your businesses, in your client conversations. So I think a really interesting discussion awaits. Just a reminder, if you've got any questions, please do share them in the little Q&A pane just on the right-hand side on the webinar window. So you can just post and sort of share your thoughts, questions, comments, and observations with our panelists today. So just to kick things off, I'm going to just throw up a poll. I'm going to introduce our panelists in just a moment, but whilst I'm doing that, I'm just going to throw up a poll just to sort of gauge everybody's thoughts on what some of the barriers are perhaps to including sustainability in your advice processes and client conversations. So I've just chucked that up on the screen now. So while you're having a look at that, I'll introduce our speakers. So Deepak Jobanputra, Vitality's Chief Sustainability Officer. Hopefully everybody has seen and heard from Deepak, obviously already today and in our previous webinars. And then I'm really pleased to say that I'm joined by Debra Sobel, founder of the Purpose Hub, Matt Coulson, founder of Heron Financial, and Richard Merrett, Managing Director of Alexander Hall. I'm going to just get you guys just to briefly introduce yourselves. So Debra, I'll come to you first. Just tell us a little bit about your background and what the Purpose Hub does.
So I started many years ago at the BBC. I was a BBC television producer director, making a lot of programmes on political and environmental issues, many series on climate change, and we're talking back like 25 years ago. But since then have run a variety of different consultancies, and the Purpose Hub now, we work with clients really on purpose-driven strategy and storytelling, and how do you take sustainability and purpose-driven initiatives, and how do you make it relevant and meaningful and authentic and communicate it in a way that mobilises behaviour change, that lands, that resonates and creates positive impact.
Brilliant, excellent. So I think a really interesting perspective that you bring to the conversation today. And obviously Matt and Richard, you come at this from that sort of advice angle. So Matt, just give us a little bit of background about yourself and Heron Financial.
Yeah, of course. So my name's Matt. I'm the founder of Heron. We're a fee-free mortgage and protection broker. And we're one of the few in our sector to have achieved B Corp certification, which is a real big thing for us. That's been a huge part of our journey in this space. And really what that was all about was taking the concept of sustainability and not making it a side project, but really embedding it into how we run our business, how we advise our clients, the partners we choose to work with, and just trying to build that really sort of fair, open, transparent, more resilient future. So that B Corp journey was a big part of that. We were already doing lots of the things that are measured in that process, and it allowed us to wrap a bit of a ribbon around it. But over the last 2 years in particular, it has become a real core focus and core function of the business, as opposed to something that we tick boxes on, which I think sometimes can happen within the industry.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating, as you say, to have placed it sort of front and center, particularly in the health and protection industry, where it's perhaps not quite as common. If we were talking about sort of financial planning, then there's maybe a little bit more momentum around this in that industry. But I think, as you say, in health and protection, perhaps not so common. So I think really interesting. And Richard, from your perspective, so again, sort of coming at this from the advice side, just give us a little bit of a background about your role, Alexander Hall, kind of sustainability to you in your world. Oh, we're not getting your audio, Richard. I don't know if your mic is not working. We're not picking up Richard's audio. Perhaps if you just come out and come back in, Richard, hopefully that will work. So while we wait for Richard to hopefully just get his audio sorted there, I'm going to throw a question to you, Matt, to begin with, because I think a lot of advisors that have been tuning into this series so far, and we've had a lot of engagement, a lot of people kind of really interested in this topic, thinking about it, wondering how they can kind of embed this into those client conversations. But there is that reality that advisors are time poor. These are commercially driven businesses. So, what are the kind of benefits of embracing sustainability and kind of integrating into the business, perhaps in a way that similar way to you've done, and kind of placing it front and center? What's the kind of business advantage?
I think, first of all, Rob, that view is probably one that I myself held prior to us really going on this deep dive journey. And who can blame an advisor right now, particularly with the level of scrutiny from the regulator, the expectation of clients, the competition in all of the markets that we operate, for thinking, I just haven't got the bandwidth for this right now. It's something I'm interested in achieving, but it's just not top of the list. And I think perhaps we're all guilty at certain moments of feeling that way. But what we found actually is having taken the plunge and really, as I mentioned in my introduction, put this into the core of our operation. What we found is that there's a whole bunch of benefits that we just weren't anticipating. And to give a few examples and ideas, one of the things that's really sort of taken me aback slightly is with talent acquisition. So as we've been growing our team, and I think lots of us are sort of always on that trajectory where you're trying to bring the right people into your business if you are aiming to grow, is the number of people that apply for our roles or during that interview process, they're mentioning some of these aspects of the things that we've done. And that was never my aim. That was never what we set out to do. But what it's actually resulted in is really a broader sort of talent pool, people wanting to come and join the business who perhaps maybe wouldn't have given us that second look previously, but want to get involved because they see something that's exciting. They perceive it as that sort of forward-thinking approach, which is exactly what we're trying to achieve. So the first one I think that we've seen is really actually adding to the quality level of people within your team. That's been a huge win for us since we started to talk more around these areas. Similarly, and I guess a little bit more obvious, is on the client front. certain demographics, particularly Gen Z, younger buyers, I guess is the stereotype when it comes to the mortgage space, and then the protection space as a follow-on from that. They're actually very interested in hearing about what we've done here. They've perhaps seen it on our social channels and our website and all the sort of outbound comms that we produce, and they actively want to deal with us. So they're choosing to deal with a business because of some of these things that we've done, and it's nice to see it actually, because not only is it let's be frank, it's commercially a good thing. It's helpful for us as a business to be able to deal with more people. It's actually nice to see that some of those messages that we're putting out there are hitting home and they're making a difference. So, just a couple of ideas there as to where that's helped. One or two others. Third-party relationships, I think, has absolutely helped. So, today would be a prime example. That deeper engagement with a huge organization like Vitality. Would that have happened were we not vocal in this space, perhaps not. And so we found that actually with some of those third-party relationships that we have, be it providers, lenders, or even, the stationery provider or the uniform provider that we work with, there is a bit more, I think, engagement there in terms of what is it that you guys are doing? How are you doing it? And I think as much as we're trying to improve our own situation, we're always looking to try and influence those that we work with in those different verticals. So there's been a whole bunch of things. I could go on forever, but
there's some really, I think what's interesting as you touch on there is that fact that there is that, we mentioned it in one of the previous webinars, there is that bottom-up pressure from consumers, but as you say, employees as well and prospective candidates increasingly care about this stuff. And I think it's interesting, as you say, to kind of be aware of that when you are, from a business perspective, looking to grow and attract talent, I think is really, really key there. Richard, I'm going to come to you, and just hopefully your audio is working, Richard. Oh, we're still not picking up, Richard. If you come out of the webinar and come back in, hopefully we'll get you working. Apologies.
Rob, just while Richard's popping in, just to kind of add to that point, actually, you touched on it there, and it's kind of got me thinking. By bringing those people that were interested in us and the sort of sustainability angle, you actually then create a self-fulfilling prophecy, which is what we found. So you're actually ending up with people who are joining you because you're on this mission, you're on this crusade, and because they're passionate about those subject areas, they actually improve the mission. So it's helped us to kind of springboard forward a lot of those things. I just thought I should mention that whilst Richard was in and out again.
No, just also going off Matt's point, I think this is a really important point, because if you are an SME and you're thinking, where on earth do I start with this? From a communications point of view and a strategy point of view, I would say, you've got to look at what your business is, what it does, kind of what your heritage, what your leaders kind of stand for, etc. What impact could you make? What purpose alongside profit could you make? And actually build out the business case. So what Matt has explained are the benefits, the positive benefits to business. And that's a brilliant starting point for starting to have conversations with people. Because when you start putting sustainability, you take it out of an overwhelming, slightly scary, I don't know what I'm talking about, this is, lots of acronyms, and you put it into context of actually, this is really relevant. There's business opportunities here. This can actually impact the triple bottom line alongside providing value. You start building messaging and communications and conversation starters with people that people can begin to understand, and then you can layer on top.
So that's exactly what we've seen, Deborah. That's exactly what we've seen.
And just on that point then, Deborah, so thinking about your background and the role that you now do, I mean, anybody watching this who's running an advice firm, how would you recommend they do kind of translate some of this into something that, their peers, their clients can kind of understand? Because these are, like you say, these are big concepts and they can be quite dense and they can at times feel kind of inaccessible. So how do companies sort of translate some of this stuff?
So I think when you start out, it can feel overwhelming. The language can feel complicated and it can feel like you're going to climb a big old mountain. And I think a lot of organizations also feel, what if we're not doing enough? Or what if we're not doing the right thing? How can we possibly start communicating externally with customers or clients when we haven't got our, all our ducks in a row? So I think the first thing is internally to start conversations around sustainability and really understand when we talk about sustainability, if that's the word we're going to use, and actually maybe sometimes you shouldn't use that word because sometimes it means environmental sustainability, sometimes it's much broader for people. So for you as a company to work out, when we talk about this, what do we actually mean and what is it we're trying to achieve? How are we trying to make the world a better place, leave the world in a better place for the people that we look after, for the communities in which we operate, and for the environment?
Yeah, and I guess
by governance.
Don't need to complicate. Sometimes it doesn't need to be complicated, as you say. And you make a good point as well. We touched on it in a previous session around not just thinking of sustainability as sort of climate change. It's a lot more than that, and actually it's a kind of broader conversation. Richard, I'm hoping that the tech is playing ball now. Have we got you?
I've put some money in the meter, so hopefully
Excellent.
I'm online now. Yeah, super.
It's the perils of technology. Richard, from your perspective, again, working in running an advice firm, what kind of, why is sustainability kind of important to you? But I just want to also come back to a question I put to Matt. Kind of what pressure you still seeing bottom up from clients and prospective employees and kind of talent, similar sort of to Matt. But yeah, great to get your thoughts.
Sure. So I run Alexander Hall with a sister company of Foxton as part of a big PLC. We've not started our sustainability journey in terms of implementing it as a business anywhere as far as Matt. My experience and expertise comes more as the founder and chair of the Green Mortgage Advice Initiative, which has been running now for over 3 years, aimed at raising awareness about sustainability in the mortgage industry. And what I've found is in talking about that a lot, there are people who are invested. There are people who are a bit meh and people who are actively opposed to it. And that's a load of woke nonsense. So it's been a really interesting journey in sort of being involved in part of it, involved in this narrative within our industry. I became involved largely because of family. My wife and kids are passionate about the environment. And I felt that in being involved in the housing market, where we know the home contributes to circa 20% of carbon emissions, I had to give something back in terms of raising awareness. Beyond that, and to the question you asked, Rob, about advice, I think it's central to what we do. Mortgage and protection advisors are in a position of privilege and influence. We're helping people at the most important moments in their lives, whether that be buying a home or protecting their finances when the worst possible circumstances in life arise, death, critical illness. And the job of an advisor, the very crux of what a mortgage and protection advisor does, is to help people protect their financial well-being and help them save money. And with the rise in mortgage rates over the last few years, that's been something that's been increasingly challenging for a mortgage advisor to do. And that's where I think embracing energy efficiency, and to Debra's point, I don't think sustainability is necessarily the right word in mortgages. I think it's about energy efficiency, because you focus on energy efficiency, and that means in the home that you can save money. So it's a really, really great angle for mortgage and protection advisors to be sort of talking to customers about, are you aware of this? Simple things like when I've spoken to people about it before, most people don't know that if you set your dishwasher on timer and run it overnight, it will cost you less in electricity usage than it will through running it during the day. And there's simple things that as you start to embrace it and start to understand more, that you can distill out to the customers that you're talking to.
Yeah, and I guess, like you say, sort of taking it at a level which is going to resonate with a client because it's saving them money or whatever. That's where there's perhaps some quick wins, isn't there? And I think what's interesting listening to both of you talk is that it's clear that, and I think we made this point in a previous one, that it doesn't have to be thought of as kind of sustainability or business. It's the two kind of work hand in hand. Coming to you, Deepak, just on that point, that sort of sustainability and business kind of working together and actually being, as we've called this session, a license to thrive. What responsibility, do you think that we have as a provider operating in this space to kind of support, the firms that we work with, the industry as a whole, to actually embed sustainability into their operations? What's our role in all of this?
I think we all have a massive role to play within this space. I think there's a moral and ethical responsibility, but that needs to be balanced with kind of commercial intent as well. We can't do this kind of freely. There is a cost to this potentially in moments. So it's kind of balancing these things. And your point just now around it's not sustainability or business, but it's actually sustainability and business. I think that's a really, really critical point. And some of the conversation that we're hearing today around increasing expectations, that's just growing all the time, particularly when you look at future generations. We've had at Vitality, at times when we're recruiting people, we get asked the question, what are your sustainability credentials? I feel as though I'm being interviewed at times, when you're interviewing for people. So that's a critical point. So from an advisor perspective, it's future-proofing yourself for that kind of expectation growing. So, and it's really hard, to Debra's point, I think getting the language right, it's also quite scary because if you don't know the topic so well, and I always say in this field that actually there are no experts. We're all learning at the same time. So actually what we're trying to do with this series of webinars is actually create a framework that gives it to you kind of simple, digestible. We've often referred to the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and the framework. There are 17 of those, and they simply say it's about making the world a better place. Some of it's actually, reasonable common sense, and that's where, the products and services that we at Vitality offer are intended to make people healthier. So again, that aligns to our kind of responsibility and our intent to help people lead healthier lives, create value. It's a form of insurance where actually you get something back without having to claim. And it makes society healthier, increases productivity. So the interconnectedness point comes through really, really strongly. So, to your question, I think every single one of us has a responsibility. And if you think about the value chain, from the beginning right to, cradle to grave, if we all have an impact, that multiplicative effect is huge. And it's much easier to say, oh gosh, I don't get this. It's something on the side. To Matt's point, you've got to integrate it. Start having the conversations with your clients and say, this is the right thing to do. And it creates kind of stronger intergenerational justice.
Yeah, absolutely. And just picking up on, Richard said a moment about sort of taking some of these concepts, but sort of making them feel relevant to the client. I guess, Deepak, you mentioned there, like health and sustainability. There's an opportunity, isn't there, in that to equally, thinking about our world and as a protection and health provider, there's an opportunity to sort of take sustainability and sort of translate that into something that's going to feel relevant to a client. Health prevention as an example there.
Yeah, it's getting that point across that sustainability is more than just environmental sustainability. There's a kind of social angle, and that point of interconnectedness, which I'll continue to repeat. But there is such a massive impact. If we don't do the right things, the effects of if we focus on environmental, for example, this week is London Climate Action Week, and I've been involved in a number of talks and events, and there's a mass of people talking about the effects of kind of heat. We've had the hottest summers on record, and the impact that can have on food security and water security seems quite remote. But actually, when you speak to these scientists, it's actually not that remote. Only 3% of the world's water is fresh water and accessible and easily kind of usable for human consumption. Only 3%, and we've seen again the impact of COVID on supply chain. So if there were some event, actually we live in quite a fragile society, and particularly when you look at what's happening geopolitically. So all these things, again, interconnected. So if we all do a little bit, and again, another phrase that I use a lot, it's actually not about perfection. It's about progress. Just do those little things that you can that are convenient, accessible, not necessarily kind of too much more costly than what you do, although there's emerging research again that shows that consumers will pay up to 10% more in many instances. A recent study by Harvard Business Review, and they did research across the whole Amazon delivery framework, and if something has a sustainable kind of slant to it, it drove an increased demand of 13%. So this starts talking to business case, business value, because if you're seen as a sustainable broker, actually you're going to drive more new business, better retention, you're going to get higher quality staff. So it starts to create real value.
Yeah, there's a real opportunity there, isn't there, to sort of position yourself as the kind of advisor of the future. I suppose it's a bit cheesy to say it, but Debra, I just thinking about what we're talking here, and I get there is still an element, I suppose, isn't there, of perhaps maybe cynicism from people that companies will sort of put out their sustainability credentials, but it's sometimes seen as are they actually kind of living up to that? So how do you kind of communicate this in a way that actually feels authentic? And I guess there is you have to act as well, but just think about the kind of authenticity of a message. In building trust with consumers, any advisor listening to this, what can they kind of do to talk about this in a way that does feel genuine?
Yeah, and I think authenticity and integrity is key. And what we hear is a lot of organisations, fearing talking about this because of being accused of greenwashing. So then they go really quiet, and then that's called green hushing. And then, silence actually can speak volumes. So you've got to find a balance in the middle. I would say start having conversations, but have conversations that come from a genuine place, that you want to listen and you want to understand and you want to hear how this feels for your colleagues and how it impacts your customers and your clients, and just begin conversations that already start from an authentic footing where you are saying, we're not there yet. No one can ever be there yet. You know, I hate this phrase, but we're on a journey. You know, this is where we're trying to head to. You know, the whole market, you know, the whole industry is moving. And these are the sort of things that we are looking at or thinking about, or, you know, how does this feel? What is this? What do you think about this? Start having those authentic conversations. You're not coming from a position of we are the experts and we've got all our, you know, T's crossed and our I's dotted. We're coming from a place where we want to listen and we want to learn because we want to drive positive change and we want to be part of this and we want to be part of the movement. So that's the first thing I would say. The language thing is really important. You know, it has to be language, particularly when you're talking to, well, anybody, but, you know, your customers, that it's going to resonate, it's going to understand, they're going to be able to connect with it on a human level. If you're going to overwhelm with all sorts of acronyms, it's just a spaghetti soup of acronyms. It's not going to land. And I suppose the other thing I would say is clarity is absolutely critical. Credibility is critical. If you say you're going to do something, tell me what you're going to do, tell me by when you're going to do it, and tell me how you're going to do it, and tell me how you're going to measure progress on it. Make sure you've thought through the context of all of that. Don't just tell me you're eco-friendly, because phrases like that are platitudes. They're going to get you into trouble. Don't just say you're sustainable or you want to be sustainable. It's meaningless. So ground anything you say, give evidence where you can, and you can have qualitative as well as quantitative data and evidence. Use stories, use testimonies, say that you're listening, report back, and be truthful. You know, we're at a starting point, or we're 1 year in, we're considering this. What do you think? And that therefore kind of brings people along with you and sort of deepens relationships and builds trust.
Yeah, I think that authenticity is key, isn't it? And you know, Matt, you put your money where your mouth is, and you've obviously gone down that route of you know, becoming B Corp certified. So I guess that's probably a quite, you know, good demonstration of sort of commitment to this. But how is that coming out in conversations that are being had with clients? You know, what are somebody listening to this thinking, yeah, well, this all sounds really good, but I'm still a bit unsure, you know, how does this become part of a client conversation? You know, what's your kind of experience in that sense, man?
Well, before I take that one, I think I would just wholeheartedly agree with Debra there. You know, we talk as much about the things that we aren't there quite yet about as we do with the things that we've achieved, because I think that is authentic, right? It's saying, hey, look, you know, we've done these things, we're not perfect. This area over here isn't where we want it to be, but this is our plan. And I think a massive part of this, and leading into the answer to your actual question, Rob, is just telling clients what you're doing, like telling them why you're doing it, why it's important to them, why does it matter? Because I think a lot of the time they haven't really had this kind of forum before. So, you know, our advisors, when they have a conversation with a client in whatever discipline that might be, it could be on the protection side, could be on the mortgage side, you know, we will talk around our B Corp certification. We will talk about what it means, and you'll be amazed by how often people have then got questions as to, you know, what's that all about, and what does that mean to me, and how can it help? And I think literally just having the conversation and providing a forum is probably more than a lot of businesses have done. And I'm not keen on it to remain that way, frankly, because I think we should all be doing it where we can. But back to one of my earlier answers, they do notice. And I think if you build into your process, as we have done in quite a formal way, that every conversation with a client at least flags this and at least puts it on their radar, that this is something that we're interested in as a business. This is something that we stand behind as a business. This is something that's actually core to what we are, and provides them with resources. So we provide further resource on our website, for example. If they do then want to go away and read more, then if we've educated one person that day in these areas, that then prompts and sparks an idea that they can then take that off to their company or their employer, then that's a result as far as I'm concerned. And the other part of it, at least in the short term, whilst it is in its kind of infancy, is it's quite memorable, you know, and we're finding that clients are actually coming back to us despite having had conversations with any number of different advisors in the space, because we are talking about something a little bit different, and it's something that sticks in the memory. And even if it's not, right at the top of their list as something that they're interested in, it's different. So I think just mentioning it in that respect is a good start point.
Can I come in there, Rob, and just build on what Matt said? I think the most important thing with customers is asking questions. I've spoke on this topic a hell of a lot, and one of the points of resistance, be really interesting to see what the poll outcome is that no one's asking about green products, no one's asking about retrofit, but the big problem in our market is the lack of stock. Yeah, no one, unless you're buying a new build property, virtually everyone that has bought a home, and Lord knows we've had a hell of a lot of transactions post the stamp duty holiday after COVID and all that pent up demand. But virtually every customer that I or my team have spoken to are going in, buying a home and doing some work to it. And I reckon if you asked the majority of customers, if you said, if you could make changes to that home that would make it more energy efficient and therefore save you money in the long run, you could make changes to the home that were good for the planet, and it wasn't going to cost you significantly extra, or it wasn't going to delay you getting hold of the tradesman, would you do it? And I reckon unless they were a mad Donald Trump climate change denier, the vast majority of people are going to be engaged. So this comes back to the responsibility. Our responsibility is not to sit and wait for people to come and ask us, can I have a green product? Can I retrofit? How do I retrofit my home? It's to raise the awareness and ask the questions of the customer, because we're all dealing with this in our working and our personal lives. And it's about having the curiosity to go and find out, firstly, what questions should I be asking, but then the responsibility to go and act on it. And
I would also say,
make people aware of what you do and what you can offer.
Yeah.
Jumping in off the back of that, because I think that's a really good point, Richard. And Rob, you asked earlier, what do you do with the skeptics? Talk to them, engage with skeptics, and actually really understand barriers to them engaging with this. Because then part of your communications is knocking some of those things on its head, and as Richard, you said, then presenting them with other options, or presenting them, don't be scared of skeptics or anyone, who's going to sort of put all your communications and what you're doing under scrutiny. Engage with that, because that's going to help make your communications even more robust and even stronger.
Yeah, I think a really, really important point.
Sorry, I think the other point to build on what Debra's just said and has said earlier as well, and I will steal with pride Deepak's phrase of it's about progress and not perfection. But yeah, it's very easy to sound a little bit preachy on this topic, as it is with sort of other thing. Don't apologize for the things that you don't do. We've all got to live, we've all got to drive, we've all got to fly. Well, we don't all have to fly, but if you want a decent holiday, UK weather, you almost certainly need to fly. We've all got to consume in our lives. So we are by very nature going to use energy. We're not going to be able to be 100% sustainable. So don't apologize for the things that you don't do. Celebrate the wins. There's so much link back to health and well-being. And we all might have the pudding when we know we shouldn't do. We all might drive instead of walk when we know it's the easy option. We talk about healthy choices. Sustainability is a choice as well. It's not always the easy option, and therefore I think you celebrate the wins when you do make the effort, when you make that conscious decision to do what is often the right thing, even though it might not be the easy thing.
Yeah, and I'm reminded there of the quote from, I think, our first webinar, which was, we don't really need a small number of people doing sustainability perfectly. We need loads of people doing it kind of imperfectly. As you say, we can't all kind of live the perfect sustainable life, but if there's a groundswell of people sort of doing this imperfectly, which I think you're touching on here, by talking to people, we can drive that, we can kind of push that a little bit more to a much wider audience. We can start to make a difference. So I think it's a really well-made point there, Richard. I just want to come, because somebody's asked a question. I think this is really important, because this is the kind of thing I think advisors will be coming up against. That some advisors may also be of the sort of view themselves. Deepak, someone's just asked, this is all well and good, but really, what difference can we actually make? The UK, in a global sense, is relatively, it doesn't contribute a huge amount to kind of greenhouse gas emissions compared to some other countries. And we're also talking about a sort of segment of the population engaging with us in terms of health and protection insurance. So what difference, Deepak, can we actually make? Can we really make a difference? What's your sense?
Yeah, it's a great question, often asked question. What do we do when China and India are kind of the bulk of emissions across the globe? First, that's kind of focusing on environmental sustainability. There are events that happen every year that 190 plus countries across the world get together. The COPs, they're called the Conference of the Parties. They all get together, and there's a lot of pressure put on all of these countries to agree terms to make what they call NDCs, national determined contributions, where every country makes commitments and they drive towards the globe working towards kind of environmental sustainability. It puts a lot of pressure. They're not always successful. These countries say, well, you've had your growth, we want ours. Again, at one of the events at the London Climate Action Week this week, in Paris in 2015, the 1.5 degree Celsius target was kind of set. Had we not taken action subsequent to that, we were heading for a 4 degrees Celsius world. And God help us if we got to that point, because there would be chaos, volatility, population displacement, really quite horrific things. That's kind of come down from 4 degrees. We're probably heading for a 2.5 degree world. But that drop from 4 to 2.5 as a consequence of these kind of Conference of the Parties events that happen. So there is a lot of work happening globally. It's not perfect. And then the second point I would make is focus on what we do, focus on what we can do. We do health and life insurance. If we can make people healthier in that context, we can make them live longer. Healthcare is a carbon intensive industry. If we can reduce demand, we can reduce emissions. So we're making people healthier, and arguably it works just as well, if not better, in life insurance as well as health insurance. You may have seen kind of, our recent study that showed that engaged members can live up to 5 years longer within, the life insurance space. So it's focusing on what we can do. Yes, there are global issues, but if we all said, gosh, the problem's over there, actually we're missing the trick. And I just very quickly, I received a great kind of meme cartoon this morning of a picture of a boat. One end you've got the kind of wealthy people sitting, and the other end of the boat, kind of the less fortunate. And there's a hole in the section where the less fortunate and the rich folks saying, how's it down there, kind of thing. And it kind of shows actually this problem is there for all of us. It's not one on one.
And I think, as we've touched on in this series, there are real world consequences that we are now experiencing in the UK. You've Richard and Matt, you've touched on there from a housing perspective. Obviously, Deepak, we've spoken about the interconnectivity between health and sustainability. So, it's an issue that's not going away. I'm conscious of time. It's always a challenge with these things because this is such a big topic and it's something that we could speak about for hours. There's so many fantastic views and opinions amongst everybody here, but we are running out of time. So I just want to remind everybody that although this is the last in our kind of current series on sustainability, we've got plenty more content. So when this ends, I'll throw up a link to the Vitality Academy, which is a kind of training academy where you can go and access all manner of content. And next Tuesday, on the 1st of July, we'll have available on there a whole kind of additional supplementary training module on sustainability, where you can find out more about this. There's some videos and interactive content on there. So I definitely encourage people to, if you've not registered for the Academy, so a link will pop up when the webinar ends. Please do register or log back in there, and that content will be made available on the 1st of July. We'll email a link around to everybody as well. So just to kind of wrap things up today, I'm going to just come around to each of you, because a common question for everybody's been, again, we touched on it today. What can I do right now to kind of change my business, embed sustainability? So I'm going to just come around to all 4 of you very quickly, just for your kind of number one top tip. Somebody watching today, what can they do to start talking about sustainability? So Matt, I'll come to you first.
I'm relieved you've come to me first, because it means that nobody else is going to take my answer. Just very quickly, I think to keep it in the context of of vitality, because that's a really good start point, is if you're going to reframe protection, let's reframe it around prevention, not just payout. I mean, Deepak touched on that, the benefits of a healthier lifestyle. And from a business perspective, we do this a lot. We talk about how conversations with a client can highlight those everyday values of protection. So not just worst case scenarios. So you talk about the aspects of that plan that can encourage that client to live healthier, to be a better person, just generally, and all of the residual benefits that come with that. So I think for a quick sort of takeaway, it would be just reframe that protection conversation, talk about prevention, not just payout, and that might just have a penny drop in the mind of a few of the clients that you work with.
Yeah, I love that. Deborah, what would be your one kind of big takeaway that someone could take from today?
I think for me, it's getting clarity over language and how you're going to start conversations about this. So if you're not going to talk about UN SDGs and ESG and sustainability, which feel quite, big words and terms, how are you going to frame it? What does it mean to you, your business, your colleagues, and how are you going to start having those conversations with clients? I just always think, would your grandma understand it? If you go with that, could you sit down and have a conversation about what does this mean? What could this mean? And how is it going to deliver value for all of us? That's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, fantastic. Richard?
I've said it already, but be curious. Go and find out some basic information. Make changes in your personal life so you learn more about it. And then be curious with your customers. Ask the question. But to Deborah's point, simplify it. Don't ask about green or sustainability. If every mortgage advisor asked of their customers, is making your home more energy efficient and saving money important to you? I think you'll get a resounding yes from everybody. And that's the start of being able to help them and also embracing sustainability.
Yeah, brilliant response, Richard. And Deepak, we'll come to you finally. What's the sort of one thing that we want to?
Yeah, as you know, we're very passionate about this topic, so we want to continue the conversation. So whether you're a climate skeptic, champion, everyone in between, please reach out, please do feedback to us. I would say it's about awareness, advocacy, taking to the points that Deborah and everybody's made here, talk about it in a simple language, build it into your daily lives. So whatever you can do quite simplistically, a lot of this is common sense. And kind of leave it there. There's so much more we want to talk to you about, so please do feedback to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to repeat that, like I said, that quote from the first one, which is, we don't need a small group of people doing things perfectly. We need loads of us doing sustainability imperfectly. I think that's so important and such a kind of important takeaway. So look, we've unfortunately run out of time. Just very briefly to mention as well, someone's asked about CPD certificates. So yes, we'll be issuing those. Whether you've attended one or all three, we'll issue the appropriate CPD certificate for whatever you've attended. So we'll aim to have those out to you ASAP. But it really just leaves me to thank my guests today. You've been fantastic. Apologies, Richard, we had a few technical glitches there at the beginning. But thank you very much to all of you for your contributions. I think a really, really interesting topic. It's always a shame that we have these sort of time constraints, but I do hope that everybody tuning in today has found that interesting, hopefully taking something away. As I said, keep an eye out for those additional training modules on the Vitality Academy. We'll throw up a survey at the end as well, just to sort of find out whether you liked it, what you've not liked, additional thoughts and comments on the series. But yeah, it just leaves me to thank everybody for tuning in today. Thank my guests. Wish everybody a pleasant rest of their day. And please do keep speaking about this. Any small changes you can make to your life, embrace those. Richard, I love that point. Kind of be curious, talk about it, discuss it with family, friends, clients, peers, whatever. It's such an important topic. So it's definitely not something we're done with. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Wishing everybody a lovely rest of their day. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Thank you.